Hey everyone, I'm Sean Salmon, VP of MCLE and Professional Development here at Quimbee. Today I'll be joined by Ashley Carter, the supervising attorney for the DC Volunteer Lawyers Project. Ashley is joining me to discuss the various legal systems and mechanisms that might be at play when a professional athlete is accused of domestic violence. She's also going to talk about the various approaches that the players' organizations have taken to address and prevent domestic violence within players' contracts and their collective bargaining agreements. I am really interested in this topic and I'm really excited to talk to Ashley today. Ashley, before we get started, is there anything else you want to add about yourself or your experience before we jump right in?
Sure. I'm really passionate about this topic. My interest in this field began while I was in college, working with individuals who had been survivors of sexual assault as they approached sort of the Title IX system and the other legal systems involved. And so I'm really excited to talk about this particular topic, ranging from sort of how professional sports organizations have dealt with this issue to how collegiate sports systems have dealt with this issue. My day-to-day work is working with survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault in protection order cases. So we'll talk a little bit about all of the different systems that affect people in these systems.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I think we should just jump right in. So the first thing is just, what are we talking about when we talk about domestic violence and sports? And possibly even more importantly, why is it different from domestic violence within, the regular population?
So it's not very different, actually, when you think about it. This is the same issue that impacts everyone who is a survivor of domestic violence, right? We have statistics on sort of the general population and also on professional sports players in terms of the rates of domestic violence among those populations. And both of those populations, we see a pretty similar rate, somewhere between 20 to 25% of each of those populations commits domestic violence. And so we're not talking about a different rate or a higher rate. But we are talking about a little bit of a different situation when we talk about particularly professional sports systems and individuals who are accused of domestic violence within professional sports.
So, I mean, I'm thinking that it's still really problematic. And can you touch upon, why that is?
Yeah, I think that we particularly expect sports players to serve as role models within our society. These are people's heroes. Professional sports players reach millions of people every time that they play. They often have outside charities or are involved with charity work at other organizations. They're often given contracts to advertise products, particularly sports-related products. So they are our role models as a society. And the governing bodies of professional sports and collegiate sports both sort of set that expectation. If you look at their sort of codes of conduct, they set the expectation that their players will be held to higher standards. And so when we think about sort of these cases that are very high profile cases where we are still expecting these people to be held to very high standards, when players walk away unaccountable for situations, that has a significant impact on the public's view of how serious domestic violence is, and also on how seriously governing bodies take it when someone has been accused of domestic violence. And governing bodies have not always necessarily supported accountability. I think there's been sort of a shift in the way that these bodies have responded to domestic violence in the last few years, and we'll talk about that. But they haven't always been seen as responsible for holding their players accountable. And so I think that given the high profile nature of these individuals and these cases, the way that they're handled is really, really important as sort of an example to all of us.
So Ashley, what governs the way that these cases are handled? What are the, legal mechanisms that are set into motion?
So there are already a number of bodies of law that address domestic violence, and just as any domestic violence case might enter those legal systems, cases involving sports players might also interact with those legal systems. So you might start with the criminal justice system. If there is a call to the police when a violent incident happens, the individual could face possible criminal charges, and those have, as we know, the highest possible standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Those are cases where there could be significant penalties, such as jail time. So we have the sort of criminal justice sphere There are also some other places that, particularly in domestic violence situations, you might have a case going in court. You might have the restraining order or protection order process involved. So a survivor of domestic violence or sexual assault could file for a protection order in court to keep their abuser away from them or order the abuser not to have any contact with them. So an individual could be involved in a case like that.